Is today an early day or something?
It's Good Friday, and spring break starts next week for a lot of the Atlanta people with kids. So, combination.
Oh, okay, okay. I'm just gonna ask to see if the YouTube people can see the video. Tim, some people, when the Hangout is full, some people will be using the YouTube. And since I just went live, I'm hoping that the YouTube people can. Okay, Alan can see it. Perfect, perfect. All right, thanks everyone for joining. This is the first talk that I'm giving to the broader population for the new build system that I've been working on for Method. I don't know if anyone's heard about the new CMS that we'll be moving to. It's a new cutting edge CMS, the best one that's out there right now. It's called Method. And so we're going to be moving to a new CMS, and this is going to be the build process for that CMS. And it's going to be awesome. I'm sure everyone's going to love it.
Hey, Mason?
Yes.
Are you actually saying that you've heard something official about the new CMS?
No, that was just the dumb joke about
okay.
something that should have been built a year ago, pretty much.
Oh, gotcha. No problem.
Because I don't know. I don't know. I haven't heard anything about the CMS one. I thought they were going to announce it, but they didn't do it this week. But if we move off of Method, then I'm guessing some of the stuff will not be useful anymore. But it's going to take a while before we do that. So hopefully we can make life easier while we're on it.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So now this talk, it's quite possible that it's going to go longer than 1 hour. So I'll schedule a second one if there's a need for it. Which probably will, because I'd like to have some discussions. And if you have any questions or any ideas that you'd like to share with me as I go through, please go ahead and don't hold back. If this goes longer than an hour, then I'll just schedule another one, maybe next week or the week after, to complete the rest of it. All right, let's get started. So this, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So here, this is the initiative that we called CoBRA, COGS Build and Release Automation. So the goal of this project was to improve development experience, efficiency, and quality. And taking what we have today with Eclipse and the SVN plugin and the process that takes to develop code review and promote code, we wanted to make that experience much better and much more effective. The second goal of the project was also to incorporate continuous integration, code quality measurement, and assurance, and also Jira integration. But today I'll be only talking about the first part. The first part, the sub goal of all of this is to be able to easily automate the processes that we have. Today we can't really, it's not that easy to automate anything, because everything is done through the GUI that we have with Eclipse and the SVN plugin. What I propose is to provide a more reliable, flexible, and less error-prone version control system. So that means that creating a development process and release management that eliminates the need for the IDOS SVN plugin, and instead replace it with a Git-based workflow and move things to GitHub. So we've created some tooling for Method code development and code reviews, code promotion, reverting strategies in higher environments, promotion and reverting strategies in higher environments, QA, staging, and production. The general challenges that so far we've had are the fact that the EOMDB is a single server for each environment. And so what that means is that everything is a shared space. And except for the proxy servers that different teams like newspaper have, where we have a proxy server for the assets where we can modify JavaScript and CSS files on a local proxy and have those changes show up in a local server. Except for that, any code that lives in method all lives on the single server, and that server is a shared workspace between all the developers that are working on that. So this makes the shared workspace makes things a lot difficult, and the current process that I'm proposing will not be able to get around that. We're still going to have to deal with that issue. The shared workspace makes talking about branching a bit tricky, because when we talk about branching, creating separate feature branches, you usually are talking about having a separate environment, isolated environment, where the changes that you commit do not interfere with other people's work. But here, there's because of the single server per environment challenge that we have in method, we can't really get around that. So when I talk about branching in Git and GitHub, you should always keep in mind that the changes that you make in one branch are pushed to the server, and they will show up as artifacts in other people's branches as well. And that's what happens today as well. That's not really we can't really change that. And today, that's how it is. If you make a change on your file, another person working on the same environment will see that change, and there's really nothing we can do about that. The other challenge, one challenge of moving version control to a separate environment like GitHub is synchronization between the EOMDB in method, local repos, and a remote repo. And I've addressed that synchronization challenge by providing some tools that I'll share with you later. All right, so let's get started on how we set up our repos today and how we bring in our commits, SVN commits that we already have, so that we can keep track of the histories of the files that we have so far. So I'll show you that. I have a test repo that I've created, CoBRA test, and this is equivalent to the assets, in a lot of cases, assets repos that we have today, like NP paid, or NP free assets, or radio music. The plugin that I'm proposing can go just on top of the existing repos for each team. So I'll talk about the CoBRA plugin and how it's imported. So CoBRA is a plugin that provides a set of tasks and tools that can be used, and this plugin is added to the host plugin. I call it a host plugin, like, NP paid. And then the tasks are easily imported and can be used along with other tasks that already exist. Then I'll go over some basic tools, pushing from the local environment to the EOMDB, pulling from the EOMDB to the local environment, locking, unlocking, unlock, forcing someone else's lock, checking the lock status on a file, and publishing, and a combination of these. Then I'll go over the development watch task that I have that can make development a lot easier. So let's get started with okay. So so this is very similar to a lot of the other repos that we have. Repos like NP paid or NP free assets. So we have usually have a source folder that contains the JavaScript, CSS files, and then there are grunt tasks and so on. There's a package. There's a whole bunch of other stuff. Here's the free NP free assets. There's also a a source folder that contains all the files, the JavaScript, and a whole bunch of other stuff. There's no, usually there's no method code. This is all mostly code that can be processed and built locally, and then usually it's pushed, when it's minified, pushed up to the EOMDB. The free sites use a gulp as the task manager. The paid sites use grunts, and there's also radio music. That's also from the team, the radio team. The TV team doesn't have a repo, as far as I know, outside of Method. So radio has app, source. So there is a very similar structure, and it'll be easy to bring in the changes. Can
he needs to just click on your icon, Mason, to bring it to the forefront of his screen. He needs to click on the fourth icon from the right at the bottom.
That's one, right?
Yeah, the one that has the white square, the fourth one from the right-hand side. He just needs to click on that to bring it to the front of his screen or to display it.
What do you guys see in the Hangout? Do you see a Slack window right now?
Yep.
Yeah. So basically, you just click on whatever user you want to focus the screen on. So for Mason, will just be CMGT.
Oh, okay. Alan, can you guys see my screen right now then? Because Alan just said that all they're seeing is.
Yeah, we can see the Slack room.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Good. All right. That's what I wanted to. Okay, so that's the correct window. I'm sorry about that. I didn't know that the YouTube video works that way. I thought it just shows what everyone else sees. All right. So maybe I should go back a little bit so that. So what I was showing was. This is the slide that I was going to show. So right now I'm showing the Git repo setup and bringing in all the SVN commits. And this is the CoBRA test is the test repo that's equivalent to, say, NP paid, NP free assets, or radio music. So it's a similar setup. So this is where usually all the so CoBRA test is usually where all the assets and everything else is. For now, I'm using grunts as the task manager. And these tasks can be easily imported. I'll build the gulp tasks, equivalent gulp tasks as well when we get to a point where we need them. Now, what's new here is, if you notice here, there's a source and there's a CMS folder that's under source and CMS portal config. So if I go here, you'll see there's a content folder, and this content folder is now equivalent to the same folder for CoBRA tests that exists in Method. So let me bring up Eclipse. I think Eclipse has crashed, so I'm going to have to force exit out of Eclipse. And okay. So let's connect to the dev environment. And I'm going to show you what the CoBRA test folder looks like. Okay, so here's portal config. And so this is the CoBRA test folder that you see. And it's on the same level as NP paid, NP free, and all the other projects that we have. And these are the files: demo, layouts, frame set, and you can see the same files here. Now, how do we bring it? How do we bring these files into from the SVN method into Git and have it appear in GitHub? So there is a script. I do have a script and it's a one-time thing that I'll be using. What it does is first I'll be creating a new branch called CMS. And what the script does, it connects to the SVN repo, and it converts the SVN commits to Git commits. And then it pushes it into whichever branch that I want. So a CMS branch that I create will, all the contents, the SVN commits will be pushed to the CMS branch. And if you look at the commits that exist, you can see that these are all my test commits, SVN commits that exist in method. And if you, for example, look at this one, you see it says git SVN ID, and at the end of it, you'll see the revision number of that same commit. So if I go back to, so this is for file frameset.jpt, and you'll see that 12481 is a revision for that commit. So if I come here, if I look at this guy, open up its SVN history, you see that it's the same commit, 12481. So once all the commits, the SVN commits have been ported to Git, there needs to be final Git commit to move all the files, because all the files come in. If you look at the states at the point where I brought them in, they're at the very root, and that's not where we want it. We want to move all these guys over to the source CMS folder. So that's why there's this final commit at the end. If I go back to the CMS branch, let's go back here. There's the CMS. You see that there's a first Git commit. What this does is it just moves all those up to the destination folder. And that folder could be anywhere. It's not really fixed, but I think it's best that we place it under source/CMS and so on. So now this is going to content. This is all the files. So you may wonder why there are two folders under portal config. There's content and then there's metadata. That's to keep the that's to be able to version control the metadata of some of the files, like DWCs and DWPs. If a file is under the metadata folder, it's the same. It's going to be the same structure as a content folder. But if a file is there and you push that file, it'll push a metadata to that file instead of its content. So we'll be mostly working with content because we rarely really change metadata. So I'll be presenting most of the stuff in under content. So going back to here, so we talked about the SVN commits and the setup for the Git repo. And now the plugin, the library that brings in all the tasks that we'll be using for method development is CoBRA. And I'll show let's go back to CoBRA test, and I'll show how those scripts are being brought in. So if you look at package.json under the CoBRA test, you'll see that under dev dependencies, there's CoBRA. And this pretty much just imports it. So you can just use the npm install to bring it in. And also what you'll notice is there are two files here. Well, there's actually, there's a CoBRA config file that's, that passes some information about this repo and what this repo is called, for example, so that the CoBRA plugin can use that information. There will also be, actually, let me show you the CoBRA plugin. So there's some documentation here. I'll be adding more to the documentation. But your local repo for your, for example, NP paid or NP free assets, you'll be needing to create a meth-auth JSON for your username password for method, and also a GitHub token that I'll get to later to use with the scripts that deal with GitHub. So two files that need to be there to be the config for CoBRA and the auth file.
So,
and
Mason, for the config file, is that just a change that's going to remain local? We're never going to commit that?
No, the auth file, which you don't see here, that's the one that will be ignored by Git because that contains your username and password.
Okay,
The config file is pretty much just says, where's the root for your for the method code that will be living in this repo.
Okay, cool.
And also the remote name for this project. Because you notice that this here under GitHub is called CM CoBRA test.
Gotcha.
But over to in method is CoBRA test. So that's pretty much, so that's going to be constant. That's not going to be changing much.
Okay.
And another thing that needs to, so now we want to bring in the tasks that belong to the plugin. And here we go to the host repositories grunt file. And there are two things we set. First, we add the username, password, the auth contents, and then we add the config file that I just showed, and then just load the npm tasks from CM CoBRA. And all this is all that's needed to bring in all the tasks. And this is actually pretty cool because Dan actually showed this to me in one of his repos, where you can just create your tasks in your plugin, inside your plugin. And when the plugin is imported, you can just bring in those tasks from the plugin. So now CoBRA test will have all the tasks that come from the CM CoBRA plugin. So now I'm going to get to some of the basic tools to work with the EOMDB. And I'll just do a few demos here. So here we have the CoBRA test. So I'll be making some changes, and I'll verify for you in Eclipse for every change that I make. So let's go to our terminal, where we all love to be. And so here is my terminal that I just showed you. And this is the CMS folder for all the data that you can see on the left side. So there's demo, EOMDB, and so on. There's frame sets and the folders. Now let's start with just a basic push. I think everyone's already using something like this. So you can go grunt push if you want frame set.jpt. And so it tells you from your local path, it pushes it to the remote path. You can give it a folder, for example, the layouts folder, and then it'll push everything under that folder. So there are 3 files that are under the layouts folder. So there's 3 files here. Let me actually make some changes locally so that you can see once it goes up. Okay, so here's my frame sets. So this frame set.jpt. Let's modify something under layouts. So layouts, let's change template tree. Okay, so now when I push up, then we can go and verify here. Oh, shoot, what happened? Oops, I only pushed the layouts, so I need to also push frame set as well. Okay. So now let's take a look at inside of frame set. This was my first test, and I also changed template 3. It's my second test. Now you can pass options with git push. You can publish. You can pass a -p and it'll publish. You can call it again with a folder, for example. So it'll push all those files and publish them at the same time. You can pass a lock file, a lock option, so it'll push, publish, and then lock the same files for you. So this will push 3 files and publish them each. And if you go back to Eclipse, you'll notice that the 3 files stay locked. So the 3 files under layouts are locked. And I'll show you why that's useful when I show you the watch task later on. Now, there's also grunt pull. So this will bring in changes to your local environments. So let's go frame set.jpt. Let's go and make a change to frame set 2. And okay, so now I'm going to go and open that file locally, frame sets 2. Okay, so there's my change that I just made in Eclipse. You can also do this with a passing chunk of files like a folder. So let's do layouts again. So before I bring in layouts code, let me change something in template 1. And save. Let's close that one. And let's make a change under templates 2. And let's close that one as well. And so let's bring in all those changes. And let's look it up under, so what was it, layouts, templates, was it 2, I think? Yeah, so the second pull test is in there. And template, was it template? I forgot which one I changed, template 1. Is it template 3? Let's see. Can't believe I just forgot. I did something 1 second and forgot later. So I changed template 2 here. And yeah, template 1 and 2. Yeah. So I changed template 1 and 2. So templates 1 and template 2. There we go. So so grunt pull brings in all the tests, all the files, and updates your local environment. There's nothing more to grunt pull other than that, because you don't have to do anything to the files, just bring them in. Next, let's see.
Mason, so I understand correctly, when you do the grunt pull, it leaves the file locked in method?
Grunt pull doesn't do anything with locking, unlocking.
When does the lock get placed in method?
What is that?
When does the lock get placed on the file in method?
That's for if you pass in the with push, if you pass in the L,
Yeah.
Then that will lock the files that you're passing in. That will lock the files in method, but that's with push. push is the one that deals with. Pull doesn't really care about blocking. It just brings in the files that it just updates your local files.
Okay, so I guess we would, because we have multiple dabs, we just need to be a little cautious, because if someone were to push before you pushed, does that mean they would lose their changes to that specific file?
Well, if they push, that's If well, that's the thing about that's why I'm going to introduce the watch task, because you do want to push and lock a file just like we do today. If you're modifying a file, you want it to stay locked until you're done with it. And so, yeah, you do have to be careful if you're just pushing something like this. Two people push at the same time. The one who pushes last will stay.
And you're pushing it because you need to test it, not because you're finished with it. Right? You're pushing the change up and locking it because you got to see what it looks like in your browser, and you'll be making additional changes.
Right.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah. And but pulling doesn't have many options. It just pulls the files in and updates your local files, and just downloads those files. Now let's go over with, so locking and publishing can be passed as options with push, but they can be done separately as well. So you can, for example, if I go in here and let's make sure that that file is locked. So that file is locked, template 3 under story layouts. So first I can check the status of a file. So layouts, story, and then what is it, template 3.jpt. That tells me, that gives me information about who modified it last and what dates, and also tells me who's locking it. And now what I can do is I can unlock that file. If I check the status, it'll tell me that it's no longer locked. And you saw here that the lock went away on that. I can even tell it to lock the file. So you notice that the lock came back, and stat will confirm that. Now, here's the question. So I think we already had this locking and unlocking with a CM WebDAV. But here is, I think, something that we probably didn't have before, that you can force unlock, although you got to use this very carefully. So let's say you see here is frameset 3 is locked by Dave. So frameset3.jpt. Let's do a stat on it just to confirm that it is locked by Dave. You notice that it is locked. And now I'll try to unlock it first. You get a saying that this is locked by Dave, and it tells you to use the force option to unlock it, to force unlock it. So this, you got to, just like with Eclipse, you got to be careful with this. You want to look at the date of the lock. If it's been locked for like 3 months, then you can probably go ahead. But if not, you want to reach out to the other person before you do that. So now this file is unlocked, and you can check the status on that. So it's no longer locked. And finally, I think we talked about lock, unlock, lock status, and publish. So you can also publish. Separately. So you can publish as part of a push. You can publish front publish. Now it published just now. If I call it again, you're familiar with the messages that you get. So there was no changes to publish, so it didn't publish it. If this file were to be locked again by someone else, it would throw an error saying that the file is locked and you need to unlock it. It's locked by someone else and you need to unlock it. If someone could actually do that, that'd be cool. Does someone have dev open? And if you could go to this file. I'll paste it in the chat window. and go there and lock it, if that'd be great, because I want to show what happens when you try to publish a file that's locked. Awesome. Oh, thanks, Carlos. All right, so now let's publish this. No changes to the file. Well, let me check to see. Okay, so it shows that it's well, I guess since there are no changes, it's not going to publish anyway. Carlos, if you could make a change to it. Okay, so he just made a change and says not published because it's locked by Carlos. So you'll get that message. If I try to push to that file, now that file is locked by Carlos. Get the error message. If I try to publish again, and so on. So yeah, so far all these are basic tools that we always had with publishing inside Eclipse, with publishing, locking, and so on. But now I want to show you the watch task, and so this should make life easier with synchronization, so that you don't have to push every file that you change locally. The idea is that we have a watch task that's running in the background, and as you make changes, it detects your saves, and then it pushes and locks automatically to EOMDB. But let me show you what this means in terms of with respect to your local environment and so on. I have a diagram that I'm going to show you here. Not that one. Okay. So you have your local repo, and there's the EOMDB, and there's a dev environment. As you're making changes, every time you save, the watch task will detect it, and it'll push, publish, and lock the file. And that lock is, it stays until you unlock it yourself. So as you're working on your local environment, you don't have to worry about someone else locking a file that you're using. Now, the challenge is always how to have your local environment up to date with what's going on out there in the EOMDB. Do you have to manually pull a file before you start, working on it? I do have something that I'm working on that will do that automatically, so that every time somebody pushes, it detects a change in the EOMDB and then updates your local file. But let me get into the task. So grunt watch meth is the task that brings in, that starts watching your local files. So let's go and modify some files. Start with frame set, for example. Testing watch task. And let's go modify something under, let's see, special frame sets. Under special frame set 3, there's another frame set 3. Testing watch task 2. Save. Now, if you go back to the task itself, you notice that as it's waiting, it detects a change in your frame set. Then it runs a task that pushes your local to the remote, and it publishes and it locks it as well. And this is the second file that I changed. And let's go and hopefully these changes show up. All right, so testing watch task automatically pushed. Let's go to, where was it? Special frame sets, frame set 3. Testing watch task 2. So now going back to your question, Susan, you don't, with the watch task as it's running, you don't have to worry about locking and worrying about someone else pushing after you change, because once you push to it, the file is locked, and it'll stay locked that way.
Okay, cool.
Now, what I want to show is, let's go to a more detailed setup, because now we're talking about repository local and remote. So let me zoom in here. Maybe I should zoom out a little bit. Okay. So just looking at on the left side of here on this diagram. So this pretty much shows what's going on in the local environments, the last diagram that I showed. So you have the method files locally, you have the task manager that sits between you and the EOMDB and the dev environments. You save pushes to the dev environments. And so the idea is that you should be able to pull from the changes, other people's changes. And so this is what I'm working on. It's not quite ready. There is the idea is to create a cron job that runs on, for example, Jenkins. It pulls the contents of your project, the files. It checks which files have been modified, and it records the files that have been changed. And so your task, your local task, watch task, will be pulling the changes. And if someone has made a change, then it will automatically pull the changes up and update your local files. And those are changes made by someone else, not the changes that you're making. But that's not quite ready. I've tested it. It doesn't, there are a few things that I need to tweak with it. So let's now kill this task. What you notice is when you kill the task, it unlocks the files that you locked as you were modifying them. And this is to make sure that people don't have ghost logs lying around. As I opened this file and I made changes here, I locked a bunch of files, and now they're all unlocked. And so other people can go in and make changes. Are there any questions so far? We have only 15 minutes, so I may be scheduling another Espresso talk for the rest of it. But let's see if let's see what else we can get in today. If no questions, then I'll just go ahead and talk about code promotion.
So Mason, you're probably going to get into this, but I'm guessing the assets won't change. The way we handle those will be the same way, right?
Yeah. The assets will not be changed. The only thing that will change with how you build the assets is before we would build the assets and then push to the EOMDB.
Right.
That's not necessary anymore, because you can build the assets and you can actually copy them to the right folder, right? So if this is, let me show you an example for NP paid, for example. So NP paid is a bit of simpler, I think, when it comes to assets. So here, when you build your assets, you can just build the assets and then push them to the source file, the assets folder in Eclipse. So let me show you actually in Eclipse. So you see the assets folder here. So this folder will exist locally on your machine, right? And when you build the assets and minify them and everything, then you simply just copy that minified file to the right destination locally. And then if you have the task, if you have the watch task running, that will automatically push that over into the EOMDB. So you don't have to push it yourself. You just copy it and then.
Okay. We would just need to move that file over from the assets local branch to this branch.
Not branch, local folder to this folder. Because for example, for the NP paid, the way it works for NP paid, you see that there's a bin here, right? There's a bin, there's distribution. So when you build your assets,
it gets pushed, it gets saved in the distribution folder, right?
Yeah, so it gets saved in distribution. With this setup, with the CM CoBRA setup, you don't need to, you can still use a distribution folder, but you can copy it from the distribution folder over to, you know, something like source, CMS, config, and so on. The same folder that you would push it if you were in method.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah. Right. So that's MP page. Okay. So let's talk about code promotion. So now you've made changes. You are ready to move your code up to higher branches and start testing. First, let me talk about branching and promotion strategies. There are a lot of Git strategies out there for promotion. You know, from development branch. You know, there's stable branches, there's master branches, and so on. Release branches. I think the best strategy for what we have here is to go with feature branches, where each developer will branch off of dev and make changes, and then merge that as a pull request back into the dev branch. And then we'll have QA, staging, and prod branches that represent the environments that we have in the EOMDB. Now let me show you the branching strategies. So here is, actually, let me show you the source of where I'm getting this from, just so you know that. So this is, for example, a very common Git branching strategy that a lot of teams use. Ours is similar, but it can't quite be exactly like that because of the shared workspace that we have to deal with. But so in this case, there's the main develop branch, and then there's the main master branch, which is a stable branch. Develop branch, you create a feature branch, you make changes to it, modify them, and then you merge it back into the develop branch. And when you're ready to release, you merge the develop branch into a release branch, and then you merge the release branch into your master branch, which corresponds to prod. Now, for us, what we have shared environments. So we got to be careful with how we talk about feature branches. So here's, these are branches that represent the environments in the EOMDB: dev, QA, staging, and prod. When you start working on a feature, on a ticket, you create a feature branch. You branch off of the dev branch, right? You first pull the changes to make sure you have the most up-to-date dev branch locally, and then you branch off into a feature branch. You make commits to it. Got to keep in mind that as you're making commits, as you're saving files, those changes will show up in dev, the EOMDB. It's a shared environment, right? So when someone else starts working on a different branch, they will be seeing your changes as well. And really, there's no way around that because of the shared workspace. And you may wonder, how does this help us as compared to the current SVN plugin that we have? The way it helps is it brings all those possible conflicts and all those changes to view, because here we're using GitHub, right? So you create a feature branch. When you're done, you create a pull request, right? And in your pull request, you can have all the changes that you've made in your diff view. In that diff view, you can see whether you have changes that you don't want that belong to someone else and you don't want submitted. You can see who made the changes. You can look at the person that modified the files. You can look at the commits, who made the changes. If you frequently merge the dev branch back into your feature branch, then you can always bring in other people's changes and know who made certain changes. And this will provide an opportunity to reach out to the other person and communicate with them and talk about whether their changes can be promoted, or whether you need to maybe revert their changes, and so on. So the curse of having a shared environment is still with us, but this makes life a lot easier when it comes to finding out, because a lot of times with Method, you won't know if somebody else's commits are coming before your commits. And when you're promoting, you have to go to every single file and look at its history, right? See its history, make sure that the commit that you made doesn't go on top of someone else's commit. And you know how slow that could be with this Sometimes it gives an error for some reason. And once you find out that someone else's commit is coming before you, you have to talk to them. And if you want to undo their changes, you can't. There's no git revert equivalent to this SVN setup that we have. The SVN revert, it just pushes the file back to an earlier revision. It doesn't actually create a commit that reverts changes. So you have to go and manually change it. And so you do all this if you happen to find out that somebody else's commits come before you. But with this setup, with GitHub, you can easily see all the changes, and people will review your code, they'll notice changes, and so on. This will make the pain of having to deal with conflicts a lot easier. Let's go back to the process of create. So you create a feature branch, and then you merge it back into the dev branch. When you go through code reviews, and when your code review is approved, your pull request merges back into the dev branch. And to promote code to a higher environment, you merge the same branch that you created into the higher branch. And I've actually provided, I'll show you scripts that do that easily. So for QA and staging, if you want to promote code to QA and staging, you do it by pull request. So there's no, you can't just take a commit and do it. It has to go through pull request, and it has to be approved. Once you have an approved pull request, then you can directly merge that pull request into QA or staging. There's no process that limits you in that order, kind of like today. Sometimes I think some features can only be tested in staging, or for some reason, that enforcement of the order of whether you go from QA then to staging, that enforcement should come from the process, the culture, or the agile process, where you first test in QA and then in staging. But the process that I've provided do not restrict any of that. But one restriction that there is that you cannot merge directly into prod. You cannot take your pull request and merge it into prod. Only staging merges into prod. So when we have a set of features that are ready to be merged, to be deployed, then we just merge staging into prod, and then we can just tag that as a release. And so we can always revert that back if we need to. Now, something that you don't see here, and I'll talk about in this diagram. So this diagram kind of shows the other one. It demonstrates similar concepts. Okay, that's too far out. That's too far in. Okay, I know. Oh, there's a fit. Yeah, I can fit. Okay, perfect. So here's a similar idea. You got the local, you push to dev, you create your branches, pull a new branch, and then you pull requests into the dev branch, and then you can directly merge your feature branch to QA and to staging. Now, here what comes up is when you merge your code into the revision control code in GitHub, that needs to be also pushed to the QA environment, because there's no watch task here anymore, right? Because you're promoting your code. So I'll provide synchronization tasks that do that. Given a pull request, you can synchronize what's in the QA branch with what's in the QA environment, because you don't want to just push your code in the QA branch and then just leave it there. And same with the staging branch. You can promote your code in GitHub, and then you can also take the list of changed files in that pull request, and then you can update the staging environment. You can also pass publish. You can do this, push, sync, and then publish all at the same time. So you don't have to go and do it one by one. And then when it comes to prod, you can only merge staging into prod. And with prod, we can be we need to be careful with whether we publish it automatically. And I'll show you how we do go through that process.
Hey, Mason, that square labeled QA branch, so that's a GitHub branch that we pull down locally, right?
Yeah.
And then we're going to merge from our specific feature branch in dev directly to QA branch, which is we pulled down locally.
But before you can do this, that's a merged branch. So
merge into dev?
Merge into dev, yeah.
Dev
so this
master?
has been merged into dev. And then when you want to promote that pull request to the QA branch, right? You merge it into the QA branch, just like it was merged in the dev branch, right? And then updates the files that were changed as a result of that pull request, update them in the QA environment. So now the QA environment will match what's in the QA branch.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. Same with the staging branch and the staging environment. And with prod, only difference is that you can only merge from staging. And when you push to prod, you won't be publishing it automatically because you want to check and verify your work in preview first and then publish in prod, which can be done easily with the commands that we have. We're at time right now. I do have, let me see. So they are the tools that I want to show. I want to actually go through the process of creating branches, code reviews, pull requests, and so on. So there's still quite a bit of stuff left that I'd like to present. But I'll schedule another Espresso talk maybe next week. And let me see, I heard that next week is possibly spring break. Does that mean that a lot of people are not going to be around next week, Friday?
Yeah, I know Dave and I are out both for a few days. I'm out Thursday and Friday.
Okay.
He's out maybe the first 3 days, I think Monday through Wednesday.
Up to Wednesday, people are going to be away, or from Wednesday on?
If you did it, but Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, I think you'd be okay unless anyone else has an objection.
Oh, I see. So earlier in the week is probably best, right?
I think so.
Okay. What does everyone else think?
I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
All right. So I'll schedule another Espresso talk next week early. And I'll in that Espresso talk, I'll go over the full process of promoting code. So creating branches, committing, pull request, merging, code approval, and promoting to QA and staging, and then syncing with the AOMDB. And so this is it for today. And thanks everyone for coming. And if you have any more questions, please bring them to the next Espresso talk, and make sure that you bring them up so that we can talk about every ideas or any suggestions that people may have. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Mason.
Have a great weekend.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Mason. Have a good weekend, everybody.